Okay, so today's topic relates to this Parshas Mishpatim, a number of ways. Mishpatim speaks about the mitzvah of loans, of lending money. And that's a cornerstone theme of today's discussion. In Mishpatim, it also speaks about acharei rabim lahatois, that if there is a bezdin and there is a dispute amongst the judges of the bezdin, acharei rabim lahatos, you follow the majority. And as well known, if a verdict is issued from a bezdin and it was taka 2 against 1, they're not allowed to reveal. They can't reveal to the litigants who was pro, who was against. What happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. The bezdin becomes one unit. The Rogachover actually discusses halachically, philosophically how it works. Is the pshat, let's say it's taka 2 against 1, so it's 2 against 1, and the 2 outvote the 1. So the 1 nebuch, his opinion just doesn't count. Or is the vort that the 1 is eliminated? Is he overpowered, or is that he's eliminated? He's like not there. The majority are the only existence. The minority are like they're not there. Third option, says the Rogachover, once the court gives the ruling, it comes from the entire court. It comes from all three. That the 1 actually is transformed as... so option 1 is, there's 2 against 1, the 2 overwhelm the 1. Number 2 is we only follow the majority. The minority is if they're not there. Number 3 is actually the minority. If you can't beat them, join them. The verdict comes on behalf of the entire bezdin. Anyhow, but there are differences, but let's just leave mentioning it on the... everything has a truth. Everything has a truth. There could be certain debates that are dependent on this shaila. But that's in this week's parsha. Acharei rabim lahatos. It's talking about a Sanhedrin or a court. We're going to see that the Gemara extrapolates from that to the general idea that you follow majority. An example, as we'll see soon, you find a piece of meat on the street. It's sealed, it's packaged. It's a good piece of meat, what? Right, exactly. It's a good piece of meat. And you look around and there's 10 butcher stores in front of you. 9 are kosher, 1 is treif. Halachically, you're allowed to presume that it's from the kosher stores. Kol deparish, whatever separates, it comes from the majority. You follow statistics, you follow chances, you follow majority. That's also learned from the pasuk, acharei rabim lahatos, you follow majority. The third thing in this week's parsha, which is crucial, is actually a Gemara in number 3. So join me in number 3 for a second. Sorry, it's out of order. It's a Gemara in Baba Kama Daf Mem Vav. Said Shmuel Bar Nachmani, Minayin, how do I know lahamoitzim mechaveirei olav haraya? When there's 2 litigants disputing over an item, and there's a plaintiff and a defendant, and bezdin, there's not enough evidence, or there's no evidence, or there's equal evidence going both ways. Bezdin is in a quandary. They don't know who's telling the truth, who's lying. Maybe they're both lying. Maybe someone's mistaken. Maybe they're both mistaken. When there's a suffix, we tell the plaintiff, listen, you want to remove the money from the possessor, the burden of proof is on you. You want to take from your friend, you have to bring the proof. Where's the source for this legal concept? Shenemar, in this week's parasha at the end. Moshe Rabeinu is about to ascend to heaven for 40 days, and he tells this Canim that are going to remain down here to keep law and order, to keep decorum among the Jews. Moshe already saw what's going to happen. He tells them, Mi bal dvarim, anyone that has an issue, yigash aleim, should approach you. Now, in the Sefer Torah, there's no nekudas. The word yigash, which means he should approach, can be translated yagish. He should provide to you. He should bring forth. Yagish ra'yalim. If someone has a case, let him bring his proof. Let him bring. The onus of burden and burden of proof lies on the plaintiff. We learn it from this week. It happens to be maskif lo Ravashi. Ravashi said, "Ha lama likra." This idea doesn't need a pasuk sevarahu. It's logical. The choiv leke'eva azul lebeasi. If someone has a pain, he goes to the doctor. You have an issue, you got to be the one to take care of it. So Rav Ashi says the fact that the plaintiff, if he wants to extract money from the defendant, that the Toveya needs to bring a raya, that's logic. I don't need a pasuk for that. Which, by the way, this Gemara is a proof that anything which is logical is considered biblical without a pasuk. Because what's Rav Ashi's question? The fact that Rav Ashi says, why do I need a pasuk? It's logical means the pasuk adds nothing. It has the same biblical power if something's logical. Okay, that's something we find a couple times in Gemara, but this is one of the strong sources for that. Anything which is an empirical logic has full biblical status, even without a pasuk. Okay, but the fact that Shmuel Bar Nachmani said, we learn it from this week's parsha. So what is the topic of today's discussion? Oh, there's a few more. Somebody lends you money. It's a 6 month, to the Bachram, we would say it's $1,000 loan, but here it's got to be a little bit more than that, right? It's $1 million loan, a $10 million loan, 6 months. The guy pulls you to Bezdin when the time's over, and he wants you to cough up the money, and you say, Parati, I paid. The general rule is like this. If there is a document against you, if the loan is recorded in a document, and there are witnesses who have signed the document, you'll never be able to say, I paid. You won't be believed. Because there's a chazak against you, which is, had you paid, you would have taken the document from the lender. The guy will say, Shtarcha biyadi my boy. If you really paid me back, why do I still have the shtar? The fact that I have it is proof you haven't paid back. And that works. Let's say, though, there's no document. So how was the loan recorded? The money was given, was transferred in the presence of witnesses. A milva al pen, oral loan. The witnesses saw the loan. The witnesses don't know if you paid back or not. There is a machlokes in Gemara. If someone lends you money with witnesses, do you have to pay back in front of witnesses? The halacha is no. The Rambam Paschals, the halacha follows you don't have to. If there's no document, that itself allows you to pull out the claim, Parati, I paid back. And if the lender doesn't want you to be able to claim that, then he should have recorded the document, he should have recorded the loan in a document. If it's a milva al pen oral loan, then after the time comes, if you say you paid, you'll be believed. That's a fact. It happens to be that Rav Nachman in the Gemara, Rav Nachman who was an Amira, and he was an expert specifically in monetary law, said, wait a second. There's a chazaka that a person would not claim unless there's something truth to his claim. If you really paid back, so what's the lender bringing you to court for? His time is suing you, he's a thief, he's openly... There's a chazaka, there's a presumption, a very strong one, Ein adam toveya ele im ken yeshloim. A person would not claim unless sekumtim, unless he taka deserves the money. And because of that chazaka, we're going to tell the defendant, you have to swear you paid back. It's a shavua Rav Nachman made up. It's not biblical. It's not even from the Mishnayos. It was made up by Rav Nachman in the times of the Gemara. It's called the Shavuas Hesses. Hesses means to shake. We hope that you will, you'll tziter and it will cause you to confess.
That supersedes Hamoitzim Chavera, right?
Because of Hamoitzim Chavera, you're going to be potter. You're not going to have to pay. But because there's a chazaka, there's a very strong presumption that this person wouldn't sue you in court if it's an outright lie. There has to be some truth to it. According to you, there's no truth to his claim at all. So therefore, we ask you to swear. It's the lowest type of oath. It's an oath of Rav Nachman. Okay, but that's the law. So if it's an oral loan, you could say, Parati, I paid. Fine.
You still have to hold the secretary?
No. That's only if it's a shvu of the Mishnayos.
So, but is Hashem's name in there? Or is there... It's what you have to tzither about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's the lowest, it's the less severe of all the shvuas. Here's the issue, though. What if the guy brings you to Bezdin before the loan is due? Or let's say even the day the loan is due. And you say, yeah, I paid. I paid early. Paid early. Whoever pays early. Halavai, people pay on time. You pay early. So this is a machloikus in Baba Basra Dafhei between Reish Lakish versus Abaye and Rava. Reish Lakish was a couple generations before Abaye v'Rava. Reish Lakish says you never believed. He says there's a chazaka, there's a presumption, ein adam pereya toich simana. People don't pay early. And he says sarcastically, halavai, you paid on time. We're going to believe you paid early? It doesn't happen. Abaye and Rava respond, no. They say, Ovid inish, it happens. A person sometimes pays early. Why? You come up with the money. You don't want to have to deal with the guy harassing you. You want to take care of the problem before the problem begins. So Abaye and Rava say you believed. Reish Lakish says you're not believed. Now, who do we paskin like? It's interesting. Generally, there's a rule that from Abaye and Rava onwards, we follow the later authority. Before Abaye and Rava, there was a rule, if you had a student arguing with a teacher, you're going to follow the previous generation. They always know better. But Abaye and Rava was so great, from there the rule changed. This is a tradition that's brought from the Gaonim. The Maharshal discusses it. Once Abaye and Rava came on the scene, tables turned. From now on, the halacha follows the later opinions. Because we assume that the later opinion knew about the earlier one's argument and nonetheless disagreed. We don't know that the earlier person fully understood the argument of the latter. And therefore, it's not an equal argument. We follow the second opinion. So you would think that we should paskin like Abaye and Rava over here. Funnily enough, we paskin like Reish Lakish. The halacha actually here follows Reish Lakish. You're not believed to say you pay early. You're not believed to say you paid early. That is the halacha of the Gemara rules, and it's brought in Shulchan Aruch in Siman Ayin Ches of Choshen Mishpat. This halacha, if you're brought to court during the time or the day the time ended and you say you paid early, you're not going to be believed. If you're brought to court later, here's an interesting thing. If you're brought to court a month after the loan is due, if you say you paid within the last month, which is after the due date, you'll be believed if it's not recorded. But you shoot yourself in the leg and you say, I paid during the time. So here you have a migui, which is, if you're a liar, why would you have added why would you shoot yourself in the leg? Just say you paid the last month, you'll be believed and walk out of court. Bezin would award you to keep your money.
You only have a migui if you consciously.
Yeah, but a person knows the name of chazaka though. What's usual? You don't have to be Talmid Chacham to know what's usual.
Yeah, but
you're right. So
usual,
hold on, it's a good. Hold on. So there's a. I would answer like this. There's an old sefer called Pilpula Charifta, sharp peppers. He says there that migui has the same power as majority. Most people would think of the better claim. There are a minority that don't, but migui has the same power as majority. And therefore, it would work at least for you to retain your money. So therefore, the lender who's being sued over here, he has a migui. If he was a liar, why would he throw in, most people wouldn't throw in those words, I paid early. It's detrimental. Just say, I paid the last month. So on the one end, there's a migui saying that if he was a liar, he wouldn't have, why is he shooting himself in the leg by saying he paid early? He's probably being honest. On the other hand, people don't pay early. So it's a migui versus chazaka. The Gemara in Baba Basra has a whole page talking about which trumps what. It ends stalemate. Because it ends stalemate, therefore Bezdin doesn't deal with it, we leave the money where it is. We award it to the possessor of the money, to the defendant, to the borrower, because we don't know what to do. He is a migui, the other guy is chazaka, stalemate. But the classical case is when the guy brings you to court before the time or the day of, and you say you paid early. So here we paskin like Reish Lakish, you're not believed. You're not believed. Okay? So here's the first kasha we have, and this has been asked over hundreds of years. A major question, and that is, do people sometimes pay early? Well, Abaye and Rava say sometimes people pay early. What Reish Lakish says it never happens. What there's an argument if it happens or it doesn't. L'chayra, it's a fact. Most people don't. Some people do. So what's the debate of Reish Lakish versus Abaye and Rava? The debate seems to be, do I follow the majority? Reish Lakish says the majority don't pay early. I assume you're from the majority. And Abaye and Rava say, no, we're not going to follow the majority. That seems to be the debate. Here's the problem. Do we b'chlal follow majority in Torah? So I started off the shir by saying, yeah, if you find a piece of meat in the street, you're not sure which butcher store it comes from, you can follow the majority. When it comes to money particularly, there's a debate between Rav And Shmuel, it takes place in Masechta Baba Basra, but it's quoted throughout Shas. The case is, I sold you an ox. You take the ox to your farm. You want to plow with the ox. This ox is such a wild ox. You can't talk to it. You can't make it do nothing. It's destructive, and you can't get it to do anything productive. So you come to me the next day and you say you want your money back. It's a mekach tos. There's a mistake here. So I say, what are you talking about? Shech the animal. It's great meat. It's an ox. So you tell me you didn't buy it to shech. If you wanted to shech, you'd buy a cow. You tell me you bought the ox to work. I said, what? When we had the transaction yesterday, there was no discussion of what you asked. Do you have an ox? I said, yeah. You never told me why you buy. And the Gemara says, imagine a locale, an area where most people buy oxen for work. Some people buy it to shech, most buy it to work. So your claim is you want your money back. Right now, the seller has the money sitting in his cash register. The purchaser wants his money back because he says, I come from the majority of people. So it's as if it was clear that I bought it in order to work. It's unfit for work. I want my money back. And the seller says, well, 30% of people buy it for shechita. Rav says you follow majority.
It's the halacha.
No, the halach is Shmuel. The halach is when it comes to money, we don't follow majority. The halacha is we follow Shmuel. Right now, the seller is in possessor of the cash. The extractor is the plaintiff. The toveya is the purchaser. He wants to take my money back based on majority. No. Shmuel says when it comes to money, majority my money, and 70-30 is like 50-50. And the halacha follows Shmuel.
It's also because halacha to Rabbi Yisrael, halacha of Shmuel.
Right, yeah.
Two reasons why we follow Shmuel.
Well, that's the reason. Rav and Shmuel, whenever they debate, the rule's like this. Whenever they're arguing about monetary matters, halacha k'shmuel, when it comes to other matters of what you can, the do's and don'ts of Yiddishkeit, we follow Rav. The reason is because each one had their own expertise. They were experts in everything, but they're specialists. You know? That's by like Haggadah arguments, often by Haggadah arguments.
What was the relationship?
They were buddies. They were both, when they were young, they were by Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. Them and Rabbi Yochanan, the three of them. And all three of them came into Gilgulim in the times of the Rishonim. And you know who records this? The one who...
Same age, everyone's same age.
Where's Dovi?
There was the Rabbi Yehuda Arya of Modena. He was a chief rabbi of Venice in the 1500s, lost all his money gambling in the casinos. He was a fascinating fellow. He was an addicted gambler, chief rabbi of Venice. He had a horrible life, no parnasa. He would direct plays in the theater just to try and make some money. Chief rabbi. So he
Sounds like my kind of rabbi.
he wrote a sefer against Gilgulim, but at the end of his life he had a turnaround. It's called Ben David, and but at the end of his life he had a turnaround. He was influenced by a number of Kabbalists in Italy, and he actually writes that Rav, Shmuel, and Rabbi Yochanan all came back as Rashi, Rabeinu, Tam, and the Rambam, each one, and based on who you paskin, the Amoraim would be who you paskin. It was a fascinating theory. We'll leave it for another time. There's a lot to talk about that. But Al Kopanim, Rav and Shmuel were together. They were friends, and they both lived in different cities in Bavel. Rav was older. Rav was actually a student of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai yet. Rav's name was Abba. Rabbi Abba is the one who wrote most of the Zohar. It's Rav. Rav wrote a big chunk of the Zohar, at least, what Rashbi dictated to him.
Why is his name Rav, not Rabbi?
His name was Abba. Rav was the master. It was a title. It's a title.
Talmud.
In some places it's considered a Tana, in some...
Right.
Rav Tanu
Rav Tanu Upolik. The Maggid said that expression about the Alter Rebbe as well. The Alter Rebbe was called the Rav. The Maggid said, Rav Tanu Upolik. The Alter Rebbe is like a Tanic arguing everybody. And the Maggid said the Alter Rebbe was going to be the Rebbe of the entire Russia, and really all Chassidim should follow the Alter Rebbe's halachas. Instead, now most Chassidim follow the Mishnah Brura, who was a Misnagid. With all due respect, he wasn't a Chassid by any stretch of the imagination. And most Chassidim today follow the Mishnah Brura all the way, barely open up the Alter Rebbe. It's unfortunate. It really has to do with the fact they didn't have access to the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch in Poland for many years. And the Maggid of Mizrich, who desired the Alter Rebbe should write halacha for all Yidden, but at least the Chassidim should follow it. Unfortunately, it's pretty much today only by Lubavitch. Some other people cook in it. Some people cook in it.
Things though, like the knife.
Yeah. A few takonos of the Alter Rebbe that spread out.
The Chavetz Chaim himself quotes the Alter Rebbe.
Yeah, often. Yeah. That's true. He definitely did, without
Of
question.
course, I'm saying.
Right, but the Chavetz Chaim's halachas are his own hachrois, are his own decisions, and very often it's not the same as the Alter Rebbe. Anyhow, back to our discussion. So here's the thing. Here's the first kasha of today is, wait a second. Rav and Shmuel have a debate. Do you follow the majority by money? Rav says yes, Shmuel says no. Halacha k'Shmuel, the Gemara says numerous times about this very debate. We don't follow the majority. We come to our debate. If someone says they paid early, Reish Lakish says you're not believed because there's a chazaka, people don't pay early. Abai and Rava say, what do you mean some people do? It sounds like it's the same debate. Abai and Rava are saying majority don't pay, but some people do, and we go like Shmuel. Reish Lakish says you're not believed to say you pay early. What Reish Lakish holds, no one pays early. No, Reish Lakish seems to be saying there are some that do, but we follow the majority that don't. It seems like Reish Lakish's din is exactly like Rav. And Abai and Rava who say that, well, some people do pay early, therefore you have to leave the borrower alone, is saying we don't follow the majority like Shmuel. The problem is the Gemara contradicts itself, because in the debate of Reish Lakish and Abai and Rava, we go like Reish Lakish. You're not believed to say you pay early, because most people don't. But by Rav and Shmuel, we pass and we go like Shmuel. We don't follow the majority by money. This is a major kasha that's been asked for hundreds and hundreds of years. What in the world's going on over here? You can also ask the shaila in another way. When it comes to questions in Torah law, the Eibishter gives us a number of tools of how to figure things out. One of them is follow majority. Not by money, maybe, but by other things. Another one is chazaka, something which has a status. If a mikveh was known to be kosher yesterday, and now you're not sure, you assume it's still kosher. There's something called chazaka demikar, the original status. If something was in a certain situation, you assume it continues that way until you know otherwise. And the Gemara in Chulin said it's a biblical idea, learned from Tsaras. The Kohen enters the house, right? And he sees a big blotch of Tsaras on the wall. He doesn't pronounce whether it's Torah or Tom until he leaves. At that time, he sees nothing. Maybe something changed. Maybe the tsaras was exactly the right size when he was inside, and maybe now diminished the drop. He doesn't see anything when he pronounces it. And yet he's allowed to base his psak based on what he saw before. We learn from there, once you know something to be in a certain way, you assume it continues that way until you know that it changed. What if you have chazaka versus roiv? Which one's stronger? Example. An animal that's walking in the street. Right now, that animal is prohibited. You can't go to that animal and cut out a piece of steak and eat it. It's not shechted. It's eiver min achai, right? Every living animal right now is biblically prohibited to eat until it gets shechted. Now, you find an animal. Imagine you find that there's an animal over here in the back, right over here, on a table over here. And you could see shecht marks. It was shechted in the throat. It was shechted, but not every shochet. Maybe it was an amateur shochet, didn't know what he was doing. So we say most people that shecht know what they're doing. Roiv hanim tzoy meitzel shchita, most that know their shchita, most that shecht mumchen hey know what they're doing. The question is, so now you're going to eat that meat? That meat definitely once was biblically prohibited while the animal was alive. That meat was at one point in time biblically prohibited. Now you're going to eat it based on a presumption that the person that shechted it knew his halachas. You're going to use what?
You see it in front of you.
No, maybe it's still trade. Maybe it's still trade. Maybe the shechita was bad.
But the status itself that made it.
Right. That's if the status was eiver min achai.
That's what you said.
I mentioned that, but that's Rashi. Tosfos says the status is it wasn't shechted. Tosfos says something in the street and a living animal, the very fact it's not shechted yet makes it biblically prohibited. So now the animal's dead, you don't know if it was shechted properly. So you're going to use majority to eat the meat to knock off the chazaka. And yes, you can. Because roiv and chazaka, roiv is better. The Gemara says in Kiddushin, ruba v'chazaka, ruba adif, roiv versus, so if you have a debate between the two, head-on collision, roiv is better. Fine. So if roiv and chazaka, roiv is better, and we paskin like Shmuel that roiv doesn't work by money, then how could chazaka work by money? And yet Reish Lakish says the chazaka that a person doesn't pay early will force the borrower to cough up the cash. We're going to extract money from the borrower based on a presumption of chazaka that people don't pay early, so I don't accept your claim. Chazaka is weaker than roiv. That's a rule in Gemara. And we paskin like Shmuel that roiv doesn't work. Right, so you can ask the question that way as well. So this din of Reish Lakish is, we're really strangling together. So we have to figure out what's going on over there. So, look at number 4 for a second. This is the letter of Rabeinu Simcha.
Who is it?
Rabeinu Simcha of Speyer. He was, Speyer is in Germany. That's where anyone with the name Shapiro is probably linked to the city Speyer in Germany, which had a big Yiddish kehillah. Unfortunately, during the First Crusade, it was completely wiped out. Many cities in Germany were wiped out in the year 1096, specifically 3 of them. They're known as the garlic cities. Shoim, the garlic. There was the Shin is Speyer, the Vav is worms, Vermeise, worms, and the Mem is Magenza, or Mainz. The 3 cities near each other. Sure. Anyhow, so, but after that, Rabeinu Simcha was actually after the First Crusade, even after the Second. He was a very strong presence in Speyer, and the community really picked up again. So Rabeinu Simcha, he was a student of Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid's brother, Rabbi Avraham. He was a student of some of the big Rishonim. Maybe more important is who his students were. He taught Rabbi Yitzchak of Vienna, Rabbi Yitzchak Ur Zarua. The Ur Zarua then became the Rebbe of the Maram of Rottenburg. The Maram of Rottenburg is the Rebbe of the Rosh, who's the father and teacher of the Tur, which is where almost all of our halachas come from. So he's very much part of that line. Anyhow, the letter of Rabeinu Simcha is talking about sivloinus, which is if somebody's caught sending gifts to a woman, we are concerned that there's been a kiddushin, a betrothal between the two, and is following up with gifts to her. And it therefore puts her in question that she's married to him, and if she wants to marry somebody else, she would need a get. It's sugya in Gemara kiddushin. And in number 4, he says like this: Mishum dahach sevara, this logic, the shiluach sivloinus of sending these gifts, chshasha berura. It's a very clear concern. Kechazaka she'ena poisekas, like a chazaka that never ends. Shehiba mikoyach haroiv, which comes from the strength of majority. For example, there's a chazaka ein, we're number 4, the 3rd line. Ein edim choismim al ashtar elim keinase godol. That means is, let's say there's a document between the 2 of us, and one of us claimed that the witnesses that signed were actually under bar mitzvah. My claim will be thrown out of court completely, even if because there's a chazaka that edim don't sign unless they're adults. Sometimes you might have a case here and there where the people weren't adults. It's so scarce that the chazaka, the presumption, is based on statistics. Yeah, the chazaka itself, the presumption is because of statistics. So too, chazaka ein adam pereya b'gois manoi. The chazaka of Reish Lakish that a person doesn't pay early is based on majority. Most people don't pay early. Another one, chazaka ein adam oise bilasa bilasnus. That we have a rule: if somebody we know did bia with a girl, there were witnesses there, we're going to assume that it wasn't just done for the sake of fun, it was for the sake of betrothal. There are 3 ways to Makadesh a woman, one of them is through Bia. We have a presumption, if he could have made the Bia into a mitzvah, why would he have made it just into Znus? And that chazaka is also, it's a presumption, we're going into the psyche of a person. Says Rabeinu Simcha, it's based on statistics. All of these chazakas and many others are presumptions because we follow statistics. The chol heni chazakas boyim min harev, it comes from majority. Koloimar roiv b'nei adam ein noisin ele b'inyan zeh. The chazaka is based on statistics, which this is really what gives room to all of our questions we asked. According to Rabeinu Simcha, what's he saying? The fact there's a presumption you don't pay early is based on majority. Okay, so you know what? Our second question maybe falls off. Our second question is generally Roiv is better than Chazaka. So if Roiv can't work by money, how could our Chazaka work by money? According to Rabeinu Simcha, our Chazaka is different than the mikveh type of Chazaka or the animal Chazaka. That's a status quo. A status quo Chazaka, which is a Chazaka from the past, is weaker than Roiv. Our Chazaka by the money is Roiv itself. Yeah. Okay, so maybe our second question falls off. But the question still is, Roiv doesn't work by money. That question's still in full force.
But Roiv and Chazaka?
No, this Chazaka is just a fancy way of saying Roiv.
Right, yeah.
So, our first question, though, is still at full strength. How could you paskin like Reish Lakish that the borrower is going to have to cough up the money because there's a presumption he didn't pay based on the majority. Most people don't pay early. We paskin like Shmuel. We don't follow majority by money. What does Rabeinu Simcha gain by saying the Chazaka is based on Roiv? We don't follow majority by money. So people have broken their heads over this for many, many years. What's going on over here? So we're going to Mitzvah Hashem give hopefully a satisfactory answer in the next few minutes. One more question though before we see the answer, and that is number 1.
Maybe also
Okay.
the roiv is solidified into a chazaka, so it's not just a roiv. It takes on another. It becomes
A presumption.
It's so strong.
But how come by Rav and Shmuel's case, most people in town buy oxen in order to plow? So why don't we therefore say that there's a presumption that the purchaser buys it for? Why don't we say the same thing over there? Yeah. Point taken. Maybe after we say what we're going to say, you'll say, well, that's exactly what you meant. And number 1 is a comment from the Smeh. Yoshua Falk Katz. He was a big Rav in Lvov 400 years ago, and he is the foremost commentary on Choshen Mishpat. Sefer Me'iras Einayim. And he was a Kohen. In fact, there was a whole story with him in Lvov about, you see, the cemetery, what? The cemetery in Lvov had lots of trees, and there were trees going. It was a never-ending canopy by way of the leaves and branches from the cemetery to the Jewish area. So how could Kohanim walk? They're under the same oil as the dead, as the graves. So the thing is, in order for leaves to be a canopy, they have to have a certain strength. They have to be able to hold some things on them. If there's very few leaves that have no strength at all, it's not considered to be an oil. So he gave the okay when he was living in Lvov. The problem is, a number of decades later, the Semeh, a number of decades later, people said the trees have overgrown, and now there's more branches, stronger leaves, and they wanted to revisit the issue that maybe the whole community can't have Kohanim living in Lvov. And people said, no, the Smeh already checked this, said it was okay. They said, no, but now there's no. It was a very interesting discussion that happened. Anyhow. Whenever you see a car, all of a sudden, going over 5 lanes, it must be Kohen in there. It must be Kohen in there. Anyhow, so the Smeh quotes a din of the Mordechai. Okay? In number 1, V'tovoi toich this is the case. The guy brings you to court within the time, says, where's my money? You say you paid, you're not believed. We pass like Reish Lakish. Hainu, number 1, Kishatovei toyin bori. Only if the one claiming is certain. Avoloi kishatoyin shema. What if the person that brings you to court himself is not sure? He's not sure if you paid back. He's not sure about it. He's not sure.
Then how can he make a claim?
He's coming to business. He's being honest. He's saying, I don't know if he paid, But the fact that it's early probably means he didn't. He's being honest. He tells Bezdin, I don't know, I'm 50-50. But the fact that it's early should be the proof. The Mordechai in Reish Baba Basra, find the Mordechai Paskins, it ain't going to work. You need the plaintiff to have a certain claim. That's the psak of the Mordechai. Everybody now the Shach disagrees with this Mordechai. The Shach says no. The chazaka here is a certainty. People don't pay early. Bezin we don't need to judge the claim of the plaintiff. It's not about his claim. The case itself, the circumstances tell Bezin the borrower didn't pay up. People don't pay early. So he doesn't like the psak of the Mordechai. So comes the Nesivus HaMishpat in number 2. The Nesivus, Rabbi Yankiv Lorberbam, was a big guy in the times of the Mittler Rebbe. He writes in number 2, Ayin Tumim is Yonis and Eibeshitz. The Tumim says, wait. If the plaintiff comes to court and he himself says he doesn't know, that's fishy. That's very fishy. What do you mean you don't know? The fact that you're 50-50 is probably because something happened regarding a payment. If you are contemplating maybe the guy paid you back, it's probably because he did, or else where did that seed come from? It puts a hole in the whole case. But let's say it's the orphans of the plaintiff, the Yorshim. They come to, but they say, we don't know. So there's nothing fishy about it. They don't know, because they just don't know. So B'yonis and Eibeshitz distinguishes. He says it depends. The B'yorshim, Deloy Havalula if they're the Yorshim of the lender, who they don't have to know. There's no reason why they should know. We taka say the Chazaka, even B'bari V'shema, even if the borrower says, I for sure paid, and they, representing their father, say they don't know, it's still going to work. But if the mal v'gufei toyin shem, if the lender himself says he doesn't know, isra chazaka, then the chazaka is weakened from the very fact that, what do you mean you don't know? If the lender himself says, could be paid back, but how did that seed get planted there? But if the nitva also is toyin shem, loy isra chazaka. Rabbi Yonis and Eibeshitz says, but what if they're both unsure? Then the chazaka will work. Yeah. So according to the B'yonis and Eibeshitz, he says like this. If each one has a definite claim, the lender gets his money back. If the lender's not sure, and the borrower is sure, the borrower keeps it. If they're both unsure, we're going to follow the chazaka, he has to pay up.
They're unsure.
Right. But if the borrower says, I paid, and the lender's not here, it's his orphans, the orphans don't have to know. So the fact that they say they don't know doesn't create any suspicion. It makes sense they don't know. They taka don't know. It's their father's affairs. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Yonis and Eibeshitz. The Nesivus himself wants to disagree, and he says that he's going to take the psak of the Mordechai all the way. The Nesivus says he thinks even by Shema v'Shema it shouldn't work. And he wants to base it on the following rule, which is very perplexing. When it comes to real estate, let's say I'm away from my house for a couple. I go to Tisol for a month. I come back and someone's there. He claims he bought it. Bezin will tell the buyer, "You bought it. Where's your evidence? Where's your deed? Your document? I lost it." Bezin will say, "Shkayach, have a nice day." They're going to give the karka, the land, back to the original owner. But what if I'm gone for 3 years, and then I come back and there's a new guy there? He's been there for 3 years. He has proof he's been there for 3 years. And Bezin tells the purchaser, "Where's your documentation?" He says, 3 years have passed, no one said anything, I didn't hold on to it. We're going to award it to the buyer. And Bezin will tell me, if it's true that this guy's a thief, for 3 years I said nothing? I didn't. So it's 3 years. That's called cheskes karkos, to make in order to reappropriate the land to the consumer. Now, Bezin doesn't know who's lying, who's telling the truth, right? So the law is 3 years. So here's the thing. What if the new guy's there for 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, and when he comes to court, Bezin says, "What are you doing here?" He says, "I'm a squatter. No one's told me anything for 20 years. So you know what Bezin will say? It goes back to the original owner. There's no squatter's rights in Torah. You have to have a claim. Yeah. The 3 years that you were there will bolster your claim. The chazaka of 3 years will bolster your taina. Without a claim, the chazaka is out." Yeah, so says the Nesivus HaMishpat, we're going to apply the same logic over here. There's a chazaka that the borrower doesn't pay early. But there needs to be a claim from the lender. A chazaka without the claim doesn't prove anything. It's only there to bolster the claim. And therefore the Nesivus wants to go with the Mordechai all the way. That if he's at least, it's not so clear the kids, it's at least talking about the case when they're both Shema. When the borrower says, I think he owes me, I don't know. The lender says, I think I paid back, but I don't know. There, Rabbi Yonis and Eibeshit says, the claims are equal, so we're going to follow the chazaka that he hasn't paid. Says the Nesivus, no. A chazaka can only be there to bolster a claim. Here, the lender has no claim if he says maybe. Everybody asks on the Nesivus, what is he comparing the two things? When it comes to the 3 years by land, of course the new guy needs a claim. The 3 years there is only to bolster the guy's claim that he bought it from the seller, or that he got it as a gift. If he has no claim, of course, being there for 3 years means nothing. Here we're talking about a chazaka. There's a presumption the borrower didn't pay. Why does that have to be accompanied with a claim from the lender? It's a different type of chazaka. So therefore, we want to have a new explanation for the Mordechai. Why does the Mordechai necessitate that the lender needs to have a claim? Bezdin L'Chorah should assess the situation and say, there's a presumption people don't pay early, that should be enough. Why does it need to be accompanied by a claim of the lender?
Why can't you answer to this? There is a claim. There's a debt that everybody knows. That's
No.
the claim.
The lender says he doesn't know if he still
he
owed
paid
the
it,
money.
but-
That means he doesn't know if the guy owes the money.
Yeah, but by karka,
Tainas Shema maybe is not a claim. It's not considered a claim.
because by karka, you're saying the guy's sitting here. He's got to make it. He's got to have something to attach to the property. Just
What if
saying
he
I'm a
says
squatter
Shema?
doesn't work.
And even if he says Shema, what if the guy's there for 10 years? He's like, I may have bought it, I don't know. We're going to give it back to the original owner. It needs to be but over here, the chazak is a logical presumption should exist independent of the lender's claim. So the answer to all this is going to be the following, okay? It's a theory, posited by some, destroyed by others, but we're going to explore it just for a couple of minutes. Look at number 5. It's a Gemara in Chulin. The Gemara says, Minaha milsa da Amar Rabbanan. Where do the rabbis know Zil Basa Ruba you follow majority? The rabbis always say, for where do they know you follow majority? So frek the Gemara Minolon, where do we know? Open up a Bible. It says in Parshas Mishpatim this week, Acharei Rabim Lahatas, you follow majority. So says the Gemara, no, Ruba de Isakamon, if the majority is in front of us, for example, nine stores versus 1 by the meat, or a Sanhedrin when it's 2 judges versus 1, Loi Kami, that's not our question. Ki Kami, but our question is about a different type of majority. Ruba de Leisakamon, when it's not in front of us. For example, the boy and the girl. What's that talking about? There are 2 types of majorities. One is when it's in front of us. There's a piece of meat in the street. There are 10 butcher stores, 9 kosher, 1 treif. Or there's a case of, we'll see this again in a moment. There's a woman, a non-married woman who was in a locale where 80% of the people there are mamzerim. Okay, and she had one night with somebody and she conceived a baby. We're going to assume that you could assume the baby is a mamzer. You're going to assume that the man she was with comes from the majority. That's based on numbers right in front of us. But then there's something else. Ruba de Leisa Kamam, and it's not in front of us. World statistics. What's the case over here, the boy and the girl? You have 2 brothers, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven's married to Leah. Reuven dies, Nebuch, no kids. His wife Leah needs to do Yibum or get Chalitza from Shimon. Shimon's 9 years old, 10 years old, right? He wants to do Yibum. Leah wants to do Yibum. But here's the problem. You can only do Yibum if you're able to have kids. If you're not able to have children, and the whole idea is a child should continue the legacy of the deceased brother, if you're not able to have kids, the mitzvah of Yibum is not there, and what you're left with is a sister-in-law, which is an Isur Karas. A sister-in-law generally has an Isur Karas to her. Unless the mitzvah of Yibum kicks in, which is certain circumstances. If the brother died without kids, right, and only one of his brothers can marry one of his wives, if one brother did Chalitza, and then another brother wants to marry her, you're back to the Isur Karas. Only unless the mitzvah of Yibum sets in, if you don't have that, you're back to the Isur Karas of sister-in-law. if this boy is unable to have children, then he's going to be over in Isur Karas to marry a sister-in-law because Yibum won't be possible. The kid's 10 years old. He'll probably be able to have kids. Most people can have children. Some people not. So the question is, do we let him marry her, or we got to wait until he's a teenager, until we can assess the situation, until he has puberty and matures? So it's a debate between the Chachamim and the Rab Meir. Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Chachamim say you follow majority. Chachamim say most people in the world will physically mature to the point they can have kids. There's a minority, you don't have to be worried about that. Rab Meir is chayish lumiyuta. Rab Meir is concerned for the minority.
Just the cars?
Now, he's even concerned minority by any biblical prohibition. Now, if Rab Meir is concerned for minority on a Torah level or a Drabanan level, that's a big shayla, right? Maybe Rab Meir agrees in principle you follow majority, he's just concerned rabbinically. Or maybe he holds that when it comes to world statistics, we b'chlal don't follow majority. That's a big shayla if Rab Meir is speaking on a biblical level or rabbinic level. But the fact is, Rab Meir says when it comes to these world statistics, aruba deleisa, come on, we don't follow. So the Gemara wants to know, the Chachamim who say we do, how do they know? They learn from this week's parsha, Achir Rabim Lahatas. That's when you have a quart in front of you, or a piece of meat, and you can see all the butcher stores. When you can count it, Issa Kaman. But when you're talking about world, just nature of the world, you know, what's common and what's uncommon, who said that that's actually a biblical tool? That's the Gemara Shiloh. The Gemara spends a whole daf trying to figure out different sources, and in the end, it's not looking good. In the end, the Gemara says, well, when you shecht an animal, how could you eat the meat? Maybe it was a treifa, maybe there was a hole in the lung in the place that you shechted. And you'll never know. It must be you follow the majority, that most animals don't have holes in their lungs. Right. So the Gemara says, okay, maybe that's when you can't check it, right? Because after you've shechted the animal, there's no way to know if it did have a hole in it before the shchita. But maybe anything which you're able to verify, you have to. That's the Gemara's final challenge, and it ends with that challenge. The Gemara's challenge at the end is, you're telling me you follow general world statistics? Maybe that's when you're unable to actually verify. But if you could verify, what? Why? Why? What's the source? Maybe you have to. So comes Rashi in number 6. Look at Rashi, jump to the 4th line in Rashi. Vafilu hachi polig b'katan v'ktana. Nonetheless, Chachamim hold by the girl and the boy by the Yibum case, we're going to allow them to get married. Even though there are a minority there's a percentage of the world that will be infertile, nonetheless, we're going to follow, even though you could verify. Wait till the kid's older and then you could find out. You don't have to verify. Why? So Rashi throws in his own ideas. The Gemara ends up without an answer. Rashi's like this. Mishum de'efshir lididon nami even if you're able to verify yalfinon minei, it's still going to work. Well, the truth is, okay, let's leave that line. But vadai halacha l'Moshe misinai ha de samchinon aruba afilo hecha de'efshir. Rashi says, I'll tell you what it is. It's a halacha l'Moshe misinai. Moshe, when he was on Mount Sinai, the Eibishter told him, I want you to follow world statistics, the nature of the world. Ruba delesa, come on. Nature of the world. Even if you're able to verify, you don't have to. Inami, says Rashi, option number 2, it could be Achir Rabim Lahatas, which is talking, it happens to be about a court when you can actually count those pro, those against. It could be you learned both Mashma, Bein Ruba, the Isakaman, Bein Ruba, the Lesakaman. It could be we learned both. The Maishna, because what's really high, why are they really different? They're both numbers. Vaha Musu Samchin, this is what we rely on. V'loi Badkin on Kol Yud Ches Treifus. Like you mentioned, Taka, there are many possible issues of treif in an animal that was shechted. There's all types of possibilities that the animal carried a mortal wound that it will die within 12 months from. You don't have to check. Why? because we follow world statistics that most animals happen to be kosher. Are you able to verify? You don't have to. Says Rashi, what's the source? Either halacha l'Moshe Sinai, B, we learn it from the same pasuk we learned the Ruba de Isa Kaman, from this week's Parsha Achram Lahatas. And Rashi adds, by the way, we check the lung because shchiach bar reyasa, because there it's not just a small minority. There's a large amount of animals that have holes in the lungs, and therefore if you're able to check, you check. But generally, Rashi says, we follow the roiv which is not extant in front of us, the world statistics. Where is it from? Either halacha l'Moshe Sinai, or it's from the same source as Ruba de Isa Kaman. Now there's a major difference between the two. According to Rashi's second version, both roivs are from the same source. It boils down to the same kettle of fish. Whether it's in front of you or world statistics, all boils down to the same kettle of fish. According to the first pshat in Rashi, it's not. Ruba de Isa Kaman is from this week's Parsha Acher Rabim Lahatas, and the one which is the general statistics of the world is Halacha l'Moshe Sinai. But there's many examples in Gemara of roiv which is not in front of us. I'll give you here's one right over here. If somebody hits his father, his chayiv mitzvah, if he causes a bruise. So the Gemara asks in Chulin, who said it's his father? How do you know it's his father? You know it's his mother, but maybe who said it's his father? And let's say you know the mother flirts around with other people, you really don't know that it's his father. The Gemara says it's an assumption it's his father. Because roiv be'ilis acher habal. Most cohabitation goes with the husband. It's about that specific couple? No. It's the cycle of life. The cycle of life is even a married woman that is, God forbid, unfaithful. Most be'ilas follow the husband. Fact. Vast majority of bia that takes place between married women, it's with their husband. And we're going to follow that to say that each kid is the son of his mother's husband. Even to kill him. That's a ruba de leisa kaman. Another one. Two witnesses come to Beis Din and they testify about a case. Now, if they contradict each other, we throw them out. One of them says, the story happened, it was Bey's ear. The other one says, no, it was Gimel ear. Gemara says, we'll accept it. Because most people get Rosh Chodesh confused. Was it one day? Was it Tuesdays? Ruba de Inchi make a mistake by Yibura de Yarcha. Most people make a mistake. And therefore, now, these people, we don't know. It's not about these people. It's not about a certain city. It's Bechlal. There's lots of confusion in the world. There always was. There always will be. It's the nature of the world. The very fact that most people that shech know what they're doing, we mentioned before, Roiv Sheichtim know what they're doing. It's not about a certain place. It's Bechlal throughout life. Most people that shech know their halachas. Some people don't. Most people do. These are all examples of the Roiv of the cycle of life. Which is stronger, the roiv that's not here or the roiv that is here? According to the second pshat of Rashi, they're equal. They're both from the same source. According to the first, the roiv that we can count in front of us is from a pasuk. The other one, God whispered in Moshe's ears. Which one would be stronger? Yeah, it's a good question. So therefore, Taka, look at the Shev Shmaitz in number 7. The Shev Shmaitz in number 7, this is the Reb Aryeh Leib Heller Hakayan. He's the Kseis HaChoshen. Same guy. And, right, hello, the Rebbe said that if you go in the street and Misnag is going to ask you about a famous Shev Shmaitzer you don't know, it's really... So this is a good one to know. The Shev Shmaitzer has a well-known opinion, and he shares it with Rabbi Akiva Eger. The Shev Shmaitzer believes the roiv that's not in front of us doesn't need a pasuk because it's logical. The Shev Shmaitzer and Rabbi Akiva Eger believe the 10 butcher stores in front of you and you find a piece of meat here, their logic itself wouldn't tell you you can eat it because 9 of them are kosher. Because you see the meat in front of your eye. How could you ignore it? How do you know which store it came from? Is that enough to eat the treif meat?
90%.
Who said that? You need a pasuk to tell you that you rely on statistics. But the general cycle of life says the Shev Shmaitzer, that's the logic. And like we saw in the Gemara number 3, something doesn't need a pasuk. It's logical. It's better. He's not explaining Rashi. He's going better than Rashi. His Taka learns different. because of your question, he and Rabbi Akiva Eiger learned different than Rashi. It's not halacha mishmei Sinai. It's a logic. It's a svara. It's a svara. I would say maybe it's even better than the roiv that's in front of us. Look at number 7. The Shev Shmait is talking about someone who's a mamzer, God forbid, right? Someone who's a mamzer is allowed to marry his female counterpart to mamzeres. Can't marry a regular Jew. What about a Suffolk mamzer, someone who's a real Suffolk if they're a mamzer? So there's an interesting halacha. Biblically, the Suffolk mamzer is allowed to go either way. The Suffolk mamzer can marry a regular Jew. The Suffolk mamzer can also marry a mamzeres. So Minater, the Suffolk mamzer really can dance by all weddings. The Chachamim really messed him over though, and they answered everything pretty much. Anyhow, but here's the thing. The Pnei Yehoshua says, what if you have a person that according to statistics, majority says the guy's a mamzer? Does that make him a certain mamzer or a Suffolk mamzer? Like, let's say a woman who's in a town where 70 out of the 100 men are mamzerim, and she had a one-night stand with one of them and she conceived a baby, right? Biblically, if the guy's a certain mamzer, he can only marry a mamzeris or a Suffolk, but not a regular Jew. If the guy's a Suffolk mamzer, he's the best of all worlds. What do I do in a case where it's 75%? What do I do by majority? So the Pnei Yeshua says that by a mamzer, even if it's majority, we treat it like a Suffolk. The Shev Shmaita says it depends what type of roiv. It depends. He says like this. Look at number 7. Based on my theory, he says, if it's a ruba de lesser kaman, when it comes, let's say it's a married woman who's been hanging out with other men, her kids, right? We assume them to be kosher. You know why? Because the general statistics of the world that most be is between a wife and the husband, right? This type of roiv, which is not in front of us, is like a certainty. So the kid's not considered a Suffolk mamzer. We're going to follow the majority. Maybe it's not his father. No, that's a roiv detalya b'svara. The fact that most cohabitation with a wife and a husband is a logical thing. It's nature of life. And it's choshev kavad, it's like a certainty. But bahach roiv dechol de parish muru b'parish, but a roiv that's in front of us, like the flesh with the stores, or like if a woman's in a certain town where most of the people there are mamzerim, that's a roiv which is not dependent on logic. The Torah tzivtzakain, that's when it's a logic of numbers. When it's a majority of numbers you can count, and you can also see clearly the minority in front of you as well. You can't discard it logically. You need the Torah to tell you, okay, you can follow the majority, but it's not a certainty. It still remains questionable. The Torah says you're allowed to follow the majority. Midei Suffolk lo yotz, it's still in the realm of a Suffolk. And there we're going to consider the kid a Suffolk mamzer. So the Shev Shmaita is saying like this. When it's in front of you, because the miyut is also in front of you, you can't just ignore it. The Torah says you're allowed to follow the majority, but it's not a certainty. But when it's not in front of us, it's the path of life. It's an assumption based on world statistics. It becomes like a certainty and it's a logic. You know why? It's like the Torah says, you don't have to worry about the random cases. So based on this, the theory is, when do we paskin that majority doesn't work by money? Only when it's a roiv in front of us. But when you're dealing with statistics of the world, it's a stronger roiv. Who says that's stronger? We just saw in the Shev Shmaitz, he says clearly, the roiv of world statistics, you don't need a pasuk, it's logic, and it's as if it's certain. It's like the Torah says, you don't have to be concerned to those randomized, it's like they don't exist. You can ignore them. It becomes like a certainty. This would work by money. So when Reish Lakish says a person doesn't pay early, right? The psyche of not to pay early. Why? Because that is the general psyche of man. You'll have people here and there, but the general cycle of life and the human condition, the majority of people is not to do that. You don't have to be concerned to the minority. This roiv is stronger, it works by money. So what Rabeinu Simcha meant in number 4, that a chazak, a person doesn't pay early, is based on majority. And we said majority doesn't work by money, 2 different types of majorities. when you're talking about the majority of the cycle of life, the nature of the world, that taka can extract money. It's stronger, like you see in the Shev Shmaites in number 7. So this would actually explain the din of Reish Lakish. It's a roiv deleisa kaman. I'll bring you a proof that roiv deleisa kaman works by money. You'll love this. This is interesting. A guy has a firstborn son. He has to redeem him from the kohen. Why? You have a mitzvah to redeem your firstborn son. What if the father says, who said is my son? I don't know if he's my son. So you're going to say, what? Roiv? Roiv B is between the wife and the husband. So you know what the husband's going to say? By money you don't follow majority. You know who asked this question? Reb Pinchas Baal Hafla, the Alter Rebbe's older colleague. He asked in the Sefer on Ksuvas, how could you force the father to pay? Why is the father chayiv to pay? Why can't the father say, when it comes to money, you don't follow majority? So his theory, the Baal Hafla's theory is like, no, his theory is different. The Baal Hafla's theory is, once we paskin that we follow the majority to make him your kid, so that if he curses you or if he hits you with chayiv misa, the roiv becomes established. Once the roiv has established the assumption he's your kid for other halachas, then we come to money and it becomes an established fact as well. That's the opinion of the Baal Hafla. Rabbi Asher Weiss, who's a big Rav now in Eretz Yisrael, and he's one of the biggest Rabbanim today, he says, no, based on our explanation, it makes sense. Most cohabitation between a wife and a husband is a roiv deleisa kamon. That works by money. That's why the father has to redeem the kid. This type of roiv works by money. World statistics works by money. So when Reish Lakish says chazak, a person doesn't pay early, what he meant is it's a roiv of the statistics of the world. Now, why did he use the word chazaka? So I'll very quickly just tell you, there's a few places we find interchangeable the word chazaka to ruba deleisa kamon. I found at least 3 places. One of them is the very idea that most cohabitation is between a wife and a husband. The Gemara, the Bavli, calls that roiv deleisa kamon. It's the roiv of the general path of the world. In the Yerushalmi and Kiddushin, it uses the same thing. It calls it chazaka. The Rambam labels that it's a presumption. The presumption is based on world statistics. 2 others. There's something called chezkes kashrus. A guy comes to Bezdin and wants to testify. Who said it's kosher? If someone does averis, they're no longer trusted to testify. A random guy comes to court, right? Bezdin's going to trust what they say. Who said the guy's fit for to be a aid? By Kiddushin, the biggest honor by Kiddushin is to be a witness, because that means they think that you're a kosher Jew. To be Masada Kiddushin is not such an honor. You could be a Russian and be Masada Kiddushin. But to be an aid, to be a witness on it, you actually have to be kosher. And how do you know if someone's kosher? So there's something called cheskes kashrus. There's a presumption a person is kosher. Based on what? So some say because based on, why would you assume a person didn't have avera? Why assume that? People follow rules. A Yid has a neshama. Like, why would you assume that he succumbed to his Yetzer Hara? Okay, more of a Chassidish pshat. The Shev yeah. Okay.
Who is the Edom?
The Shev Shmaitz himself in another place says he thinks it works the same way as every chazaka de mikara, every status quo. When you're born kosher. Like you're born ready. Every Jew at one point in their life was kosher. So now you're not sure if it changed. We have a general rule. If something had a specific status and you're not sure if it changed, you leave it the way it was. That's his theory. It works like a mikveh, like the tzaras. Anytime you have a chazaka de mikara and you don't know that it changed, you assume things continued the way they were. Comes the Chelkas Yoyev, about 100 years ago. He was a big gun, a Chassidisha, and he tainas that we use the word cheskes kashrus, but it's based on roiv deleisa kamon. Most people throughout history are kosher Jews. At least most people that dress like from Jews are kosher Jews, right? Meaning, today unfortunately with intermarriage and everything, but most people that have a yarmulke and tzitzis are kosher. Maybe the guy is, I don't know, smoking on Shabbos. It could happen. These things happen. But the vast majority of world statistics, because if someone looks like they're from, they are from. So he
was
says...
Was there ever a time in history where most Jews were from? I don't think so.
No, but if he's dressed,
You're saying in Bayis Rishon, works Avodah Zarah? Avodah Zarah? They did Avodah Zarah. In the Midbar was good.
So where's the road? Where's the road?
The day the Torah was given, we had a good day. We had a good day.
So where's the road? Where's the road?
No, most people that look like a from Jew.
You have to look.
Yeah, well, I'm adding that, but I think that's the idea. Someone who has a yarmulke and tzitzis, most such people are genuinely from. Are genuinely from. Right, exactly. Some people, and we know that some people, it's a minority. The point is, the Chelkas Yoav says what we call chazak is really a roiv deleisa. Come on. I'll give you one more example. Chezkas Chaim, the assumption a person's alive. You have a woman married to a kohen. She's busy eating truma, right? The perks of marrying a kohen. He goes overseas. He's gone for 3 years, right? Who said her husband's still alive? She's busy eating the truma. She's allowed to assume her husband's alive. It's called Chezkas Chaim. There's a presumption he's alive. Most people understand that to mean it's a chazaka d'mikara. There's a previous... He left alive, right? 3 years have passed. Why assume that he died until you know that it changed, right? So if the guy's there for 70 years...
Status quo.
What
What?
if she squatted on his property?
At any age.
No, so the chayr at a certain time... There's something called a chazaka, which by now you know would have changed, or you presume would have changed. But if it's within the first couple years, there's no reason to presume that it changed. That's how most people understand that, based on the general idea, chazaka d'mikara, the original status quo. The Pnei Yoshu and Masechta Gittin says that's not what it's about. Because the truth is, no one lives forever. Therefore, the chazaka is always destined to change, and it's something you may not be able to rely upon. Rather, he said it's based on Ruba Deleisa Kamon. Let's say the guy left when he was 50, now he's 53. Most people don't die during those 3 years. So you assume the person came from the majority. So these are 3 examples of when we use the word chazaka, what it really means is a Ruba Deleisa Kamon. So the theory we're giving over here, and Usher Weiss wanted to push it, and later on he retracted, but still there's good room to push this, that what Reish Lakish meant is the chazaka person doesn't pay early. Yeah, it's only the majority. He agrees to buy and rova. Some people pay early. But this is a majority of the cycle of life, a roiv which is not in front of us, which according to the Shev Shmaitze is logical, doesn't need a pasuk, and it becomes like a certainty. There is no question to it. This will answer the question we had on number 1, the Mordechai. The Mordechai said if the lender is not sure, the case gets thrown out. Why? Because the power of the chazaka is, since most people don't pay early, it's a general cycle of life, you don't have to be worried about the minority. There is no question over here. But if the lender himself doesn't know, he's telling Bezdin there's a question mark over here. Then this roiv loses its whole power. It becomes like the regular roiv, and you don't follow money by majority. It's only when you could say that you don't have to be worried about the random. They don't exist. When you follow the circuit of life, like the Shev Shmaitze said, these roivs which are general throughout the world, it's like the miyut can be ignored. But if the lender himself says he doesn't know, he's telling Bezdin there's a question. How could Bezdin say there's no question? The guy himself says he doesn't know. Then this roiv becomes like every roiv. You don't follow majority. And that's why the Mordechai says it won't work. Okay.
Why did Rav Moshe Weiss retract?
Rav Moshe Weiss retracted.
I like the flaws.
The balafla, there's a way to mix the 2 answers in, the balafla.
The balafla holds every roiv.
There's a way to get mixed up.
What do you mean?
How do you put them together? The balafla's taina is that both roivs are the same. But once a roiv has been set in stone for other halachas, it became a fact, and then
Right,
it'll
in
work.
the same situation. You can't play both sides of the
Right,
coin.
exactly. Exactly.
You can't have it talk out of both sides of your mouth. It does make a lot of sense, but
He says it probably makes sense.
because a lot of times in Gemara you see times where they say, "Oh, for this it's like that," and this like here we try to say it, and it's true. It doesn't make sense once you lock them in.